Okay, welcome. It's good to have everybody here. Thank you for joining us. This is Pat O'Mara. I'm going to be leading us through a presentation today where we are looking at a number of items. We're going to have an update on the WeWork transaction. We are going to spend a little bit of time talking about our student housing project in North Dakota and where we are on that. And there's some pretty unique critical components to that we're excited to discuss. We are going to talk through a multifamily housing project, the Cape at Savona, give a little bit of an update on how that project is coming along and where that's going. We're going to do a short preview of the Inveniam IO document retention system and our UI and how that relates to the process really of moving to a global, efficient digital marketplace as it relates to the verification and validation of data that's coming in from these very data-rich but seldom frequently trading assets like the equity in real estate or private debt, and how these mechanisms of verification and validation of data will be transformational in the creation of pricing models and then distribution of those assets, making a significantly more efficient global marketplace. And we believe compressing the illiquidity premium dramatically that you have in those marketplaces. Those are in the private debt market, that's a $1.4 trillion a year market. And in the equity real estate market, that is a far, far, far larger marketplace. But we think that the compression on illiquidity premiums will be meaningful. Then we're going to go through our Impact Africa Fund, and we'll be talking about that. So that's our agenda for today. And again, we're going to have Sean, if you can go ahead and mute everybody else, that would be great. And so now we're going to walk through, and if we can please use the chat function as a mechanism to ask all those questions, that would be great. So with that being said, let me just kind of drive in. Any questions or comments before we begin? Fantastic. All right, we're going to begin. So the discussion right now is the Miami WeWork building and where we stand. We are in the process, as I described. We've had Ackman Ziff helping us secure the permanent financing. We have a number of fantastic offers in both on permanent financing and temporary financing on the senior piece, which was what really caused us the angst and difficulty in our primary closing. We have both a family office that we were working with late last night and into this morning as to securing what could be a bridge loan prior to the permanent financing that we get. We have several CMBS offers, which is long-term fixed rate financing that is a spread over the swaps. And because of where the yield curve is today, while it does not portend well for the economy long-term, it is a great time to be securing long-term financing. It's going to take us 45 days anyways to lock in that long-term financing. So it looks like we will have a bridge. And the cost of that, we're getting 190 to 220 basis points over the spread. So that means we're going to be having fixed rate financing for the next, let's call it 7 to 10 years at somewhere in the 420 range, which is absolutely fixed rate 420, which is absolutely fantastic. And that, as you can imagine, really bumps up the rate of return on this project. And so we'll be having, in the low double-digit returns. We were using very conservative numbers in our projections as far as what type of financing we could get. We were now into the nice low double-digit returns with this financing that we've locked in. We knew that we would be able to lock in, or we believed we'd be able to lock in CMBS financing, but as we were doing this transaction that had quite a few moving parts, we did want to limit the variables, right? What the various different components were that we had to manage. And as we did that, we thought the senior financing was something that we could leave off, but that actually, it ended up being a little bit of a snag in the intercreditor agreement between our senior financing and our mezz financing that messed up our first close. So here we are now, we're working towards that. We are also working to collect some equity, some additional equity, because we did lose some of our equity players when the documentation did not look right. And so we are trying to either get those players back to the table or replace them. We're looking to close this in the next 9 business days. So time is of the essence, and we're moving on that right now. And so that's where we are. We're excited to be doing this. We're going to be showing you later on in this webinar a little bit about our IO document retention system, how that works, and we're going to be literally using the WeWork tokens as an example to show you these documents, how they work, what is the ownership of the document entitle you to, what is the documentation you can see, how do you access it, where can you access it, accessing it through a variety of different ways, and how do you validate that the document exists and is real and the data hasn't been tampered with. So it's pretty fantastic. We're excited to do that, and we're going to again be using the Miami WeWork building. So that's where we are in the process. Again, this is the WeWork building. We'll have, let's call it, between 40 and 45 million of senior financing, and we'll have, let's call it, 25 million of senior debt, or I'm sorry, of equity, please excuse me, 25 million of equity and 40 to 45 million of senior debt. And as you know, you squeeze the balloon in one and the other one goes up, et cetera. So that's where we stand. I want to just make sure that there's no last questions on the Miami WeWork building before we move on to the North Dakota State University student housing project, which is 917 beds. Any commentary or questions on the Miami WeWork building? All right, you guys will be seeing those tokens in about 15-20 minutes. So we'll, as we go through the document retention system and how we're utilizing the distributed ledger as a mechanism to validate the data coming out of the commercial real estate asset. And I think this really is going to be a mechanism that's transformational to CRE tech and CRE financing for companies like, whether it's Cushman & Wakefield or WeWork directly, or CBRE or somebody like that, who's going to have a mechanism to validate data coming out of the buildings that they manage for themselves or on behalf of third parties. And as they manage those buildings and can validate the data, we should be able to provide the most efficient financing and lower the cost of money, especially as it relates to these middle credit players that that pay a premium on their credit. And it's probably what we would consider to be a mispriced credit. And so that is something we're excited about. So with that being said, I'm going to move into our North Dakota State University housing. This is by our friends Roars Development in North Dakota. They have 917 beds. We have had this on our website since January. We talked about it as one of the 4 transactions that we were talking to people about. We've had a number of people express interest in this to us directly, even though we haven't been marketing it actively. We had one of the top 10 municipal underwriting firms in the country engage with us, and they've given us a term sheet to take down the entire trade. That's between $76 and $78 million. We have reviewed that. We've gotten on the phone with our lawyers and our accountants with Roars Development, and it looks like this is a term sheet that we are excited to finalize. We're going to be using a public-private partnership where a nonprofit is going to be buying the asset. This is the structure that we're looking at right now. It's not been finalized. We are also have 2 additional players that have expressed interest to us. If you have interest, please let us know as well, whether it's to buy the tax-exempt notes themselves or to be a direct investor as an alternative investor. If you wanted to buy them, you'd be doing that. We would be making the introduction to Raymond James, where we would be helping place that for them. Otherwise, they are bearing and taking on the distribution responsibility where they're going to take the whole deal down and distribute it internally. But this is a deal where literally a public-private partnership is done, where there's a nonprofit that is going to be accessing the muni market or the tax-exempt market to buy the asset. And then as they pay down the notes over time, any excess capital is going to be going to a not-for-profit, and Roars is going to be working on this transaction over the next couple weeks with us as we relate to a number of these nonprofit entities. And what is exciting about this is, for those of you who know, the muni market is not a digital market. It's not an electronic instrument market. It is a physical settlement market. And what we're going to be doing is executing the trade, physically settling it, but creating the tokens and the document retention and the data that supports this immediately being able to flip into an electronic instrument whenever anybody wants to. Again, we use the example of when the municipal market went in, whether that, let's call it the 2004, 2003, 2004, 2005 range, when we first started to get the offering documents that came as large leather-bound books, and in the back sleeve there was actually a CD in there. And I still remember on my very first deal where we got the offering documents done on a completed trade, and I took the CD and I stuck it in the machine, and I just couldn't believe. I just thought, this is amazing. Look at this. This is unbelievable access to documentation. I no longer have to be maintaining that physical book. And then within a year or two, people were giving away physical copies of those books. We're going to see this, and literally this is a movement from physical documentation to disk to literally the utilization of a tokenized instrument which has access to cordoned, restricted data that exists in an S3 bucket, but the distributed ledger serves both as an indexing function and a form of notary on all the documentation associated with the trade. And literally, it's the movement of the entire muni market to this. So we're extremely excited about this. Again, we have the term sheet. We've accepted the term sheet. We're looking to finalize that, and then we'll go through the process of executing the trade, which should clear, let's call it in Q3, middle to late Q3, and which is an incredibly exciting transaction, and that's called that $76 million. And the fact that it's one of the top 10 municipal underwriting firms in the nation that's taking it down is absolutely fantastic. So that's where we are on the student housing transaction. I want to pause there and ask if there are any questions. I think I'm moving a little bit faster than our schedule anticipated, but I want to make sure we have time to walk through the presentation fully. Any questions on this? All right, so we're very excited about that's been taken down. And then we have the next piece is our multifamily housing project in Southwest Florida. This is a project that in February of 2018, Inveniam, through a special purpose entity, made a $3.3 million loan to a developer down in Florida, also Roars, who we've had a long-standing good relationship with, where we lent them the money as a form in mezz format for them to buy the land that this project was going to move forward on. It's a 320-bed project in Southwest Florida. It's in Cape Coral specifically. It's the 9th largest city in Florida, growing dramatically, fastest growing city in the state of Florida. And there is an enormous amount of demand for multifamily housing. They need 5,000. They're underbuilt to the tune of 5,000 multifamily apartments. And following the crash in 7, 8, 9, there was just an absolute dearth. There was no construction, no permitting at all for literally a 10 to 11 year period. And so what we did is we went in, saw that this is a fantastic community. It has great demographics. It has great it has great let me just say the environmental atmosphere as it relates to living. It is a commuter community into Fort Myers. The average age is of the community is fantastic. And we see this as working blue collar, white collar, young housing, and so we are in the process of finalizing all of our permitting. That should be done on Friday. We have secured the senior lending from a national credit union for $38 million, and the capital stack is $7.5 million of equity, $7.8 million of mezz, and that's going to be taken out by EB5, and then the $38 million on a constructed basis. It has a $60.5 million value, so that above the or below the mezz you have 15 million of equity on a constructed basis, and Roars is going to be leading that process for us. And there's someone who's been in the development business for years and years and years, and they're a fantastic operator and executor, so we have a high degree of confidence in them. And so what we're doing is we put out 3.3 million, and we're looking for another 4.5 million to come in to complete that mezz that is going to sit in between those two. The life of that loan is probably a 6 to 12 month hold, because that's going to be taken out by EB5 monies, and that is a current monthly pay of 15%. Since we've had that loan out since February of 15, we've never had a missed payment. We've never had a late payment. It's like clockwork, and so 15% cash pay, and then we're going to get taken out by the EB5 in a 6 to 12 month hold on a fantastic project. So if there's anybody who has interest in that, please let us know. Again, this is a tokenized instrument. This is actually our first third-party transaction that Inveniam did, where we were a lender for 3.2 million to acquire that land. That was our first tokenized project, again in February of 2018. So that's the Cape at Savona. Pat Murphy, are you on the phone, and do you have an unmuted microphone where you can talk into that? All right, sorry, I apologize about that. Pat Murphy is available for any questions and comments on the Cape at Savona. He's handling that. We're going to be closing that in mid-July. We should be taking those orders in the next 8-9 days. We think we're going to take it off. Again, we are interested in meaningful bite sizes. We do not have the need for it to be a QP and or QIB only world, but we don't want to take a lot of smaller orders. So we would ask people to take bite sizes in the $500,000 to $1 million range, but we're open to any participation in that transaction. And so those are our transactions that we have that we're working on right now. We're going to talk about the Impact Africa Fund, is how we're going to end this out, and that's going to be an exciting project where we will take in smaller ticket sizes, 10, 20,000, where we are also focused on the accredited investors utilizing our system to facilitate the tokenization of microfinance in Africa. So that's where we are. Pat Murphy is on the phone, but is muted, so we apologize about that. So I'll ask again, any questions that you guys might have on chat, please let us know. And if I don't see any questions, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start running us through the Inveniam IO system. So I am going to share my screen. Okay, so the Inveniam IO system is the mechanism by which the data associated with these transactions are done. And as everybody knows, you can go into the WeWork building and go in through CapLinked, and you can see here's a transaction. It gives a little bit of an overview. You have all the various different files, the marketing documents, the property information, financial information, private placement memorandum. And as you go into here, all the documents are here for you to look at, the property information. So you've got your environmental, whether it's lead, asbestos, water, mold, hazmat, all of that is here for you to use. This isn't a typical deal room, and for the next 30 years, all the data being created from the building is going to be maintained and stored in this deal room that we have that is a form of UI UX for the user. But in addition, if you wanted to come in, and so I'm going to go to my to Ethereum, and so we have I'm at Etherscan, right? And if you wanted to say ICR E1, okay, hold on, let's see, Inveniam, ICRE, real estate, Inveniam commercial real estate 1 LP. This is the actual token that was created, that is tokenized. And what you can do is you can actually look at the various different documents that are hashed. So if you wanted to say, does this look right, etc., you can all the various different deals. We can look at what are the documents that are hashed, and as we go to closing, we'll have about 100 documents that are hashed in, and we can look at this. And so let's go in here. I'm going to look specifically, and you're able to say, okay, this is a transaction that happened an hour and 6 minutes ago. So we've just begun putting all the documents and attaching them to the token, the smart contract. Right now, all of them are held in one wallet because we haven't completed the deal. And you can see, okay, what is the information that's in the payload of the block? So what we have here is the deal name, Inveniam Commercial Real Estate 1 LP interests, right? And this document specifically is the WeWork binder, right? We've got a URI so that we know where it is. There's a checksum. There's the algorithm and the timestamp of when it was put in. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to go. This is just pulling this information from the payload of the block. I am going to go in and open a new window, and I'm going to paste it in, and it knows me because my MetaMask wallet is the one associated that actually holds this, or the Inveniam one, excuse me. But you can see here's the WeWork building, security building, right? And so here's the documents, and if we want to see the Miami-Dade building and zoning documents as it relates to the future, all of the documentation associated with the last work done on the building, and this happens to be the document that I pulled up, right? And we say, okay, this is the one that is hashed into the payload of a block, and it's clear, and I got access to it. Now I'm going to do an incognito window where it does not know me, and it does not know my MetaMask wallet is not in there. So I pasted the exact same thing that I pulled from the payload of a block on the blockchain that I could validate, and it says, oh, my access is forbidden and I have to log in, right? So I log in, and here it is. I'm logged in that way as well, right? So let me X out of this version, the incognito version, right? But because my MetaMask wallet is integrated in and it knows that I hold the wallet, I have access. So you have both regular access, meaning password, and a login, as well as the MetaMask integration is here. But you can see all the documentation for the permits, the inspection dates, who signed off on it, what were the items, etc. Right? And if you say, oh, I want to see this, let's go find that document in here. Here it is in an easier, more user-friendly. Oh, look at that. I got to download the document. Sorry. Let me download it. It's going to take a few seconds because it's a large document that I download, and I can see it through the WeWork building as well. And so I've got that transaction, or that, and here it is. We've got the exact same document with all the various different approvals for each of the zoning, for all of the work done for the complete renovation of the building in 2017, everything from structural steel, millwork, all the documents, etc. And that was in the payload of a block. You can also access it through our cap-linked system, or if you actually want to go to docs.inveniam we've got all of the documents that we have in here. So let's call that, what was the name of that? Let's just type in the word binder. Here we go, building systems, warranties, drawings. I can look at it this way, and I've got access that way. So you can log in to the Inveniam system, our document retention system. You can log in through WeWork, which is a public-facing integrated deal room type of a setting that is a folder-based system to gain access to it. And there's Q&A and there's updates, and we can store videos and all of that. This is our document retention system, or you can go in through Etherscan and see all the documents, right? And so I'm going back to our contract here. Here's the various different documents. I was looking at this fourth one up, but let's just go pick another one here. I have not looked at this, but this is our mechanism for validation. And so again, here's this is Inveniam Commercial Real Estate 1 interests. This is the estoppel certificate, right? And we have here a URI on where you can find it. Here's the checksum. Here's the algorithm to ensure that the document has not in any way changed. And this is the hyper notary function. Then we've got the timestamp and the Fiji. The Fiji, which is the universal identifier for, it's the global identifier for financial instruments. We do not have our Fiji code issued yet. We're working on that for this transaction. It usually happens post filing of your Reg D or some SEC documentation, but that Fiji documentation will be put in here. In our previous transactions, we've had Fiji documentation in, but in that case, we were actually creating the contract post execution of the trade. So,
and Pat, just to let people know that the Fiji is really what Bloomberg needs to then start publishing information about a financial instrument.
That's correct. As soon as we have the Fiji, these tokens will all be published in the Bloomberg system, right? And so all of this will be cross-listed, where the documentation from this information, where the deal data is going to be in the will be in Bloomberg. You'll be able to see the deal in Bloomberg. You'll be able to see the data associated with the building in our data retention systems and in the deal room, but all of this is integrated, and the distributed ledger holds the timestamp and the indexing function of all of the data coming out of not only the asset, but the instrument, and is being secured on the blockchain. And so let's go back here. I'm going to try this. This is the estoppel certificate that I just pulled from Etherscan, and here's the estoppel certificate August 7th, 2017, as it relates to the actual lease. For those of you who know, an estoppel is a mechanism to describe the contents of the lease and make representations and warranties to somebody who's going to have a second a position on that. So at any rate, this is where we are. With our process, but what we wanted to do is show the utilization of the blockchain and how we're using the DLT and the relationship to the token, and the token's relationship to governing access to data inside the Inveniam deal room and all the various different documents. And whether we're talking about, so let's talk about, you can type in, I want to see, where are we with asbestos? Okay, here's the asbestos survey, here's the asbestos notice, here's the asbestos reinspect, right? I mean, we've got all the documents. So this is both something that, and this is not folder driven. This is more of a listing of all the documents as it relates to what a form of storage that is, as it relates to what is in Etherscan. The difference between this and what is in the WeWork document, or I'm sorry, our data room, is the data room has all basic data room functionality, so that when you download a document, it creates a watermark. When it creates a watermark, it changes the document, so the cipher and the hash will not yield the outcome that you expect, because the document's been changed via a watermark. So this is a UI UX easy to use function where we're going to be able to show not only all the documentation as it relates to the creation of the financial instrument, but also the performance of the financial instrument, meaning financial performance, as well as performance of the underlying asset, right? And that's all that IoT data that's coming out that we're capturing, collecting, whether we're talking foot traffic, whether we're talking security data, whether we're talking environmental, whether we're talking about the relationship of the asset to what's below it, meaningfully the municipality, right? And all the utilities, power utilization, all that kind of great stuff, and the relationship of the asset to that which is above it, which is how we think of the relationship of the asset to the tenants, et cetera. So all of the legal, financial performance, rent rolls, all of that stuff is captured. We'll be able to see it in here. You'll be able to see it via EtherScan, so you can validate that the data, what is the source of the data, when was it written in there, what deal is it associated with, and this is the, again, indexing and notary function. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to take you guys back. I'm going to log out here, and I am going to, please excuse me. So why don't I just pause there and ask if anybody has any questions. Kevin, thank you for making that great comment about as soon as our Fiji is put into that deal, all of these transactions will be, once we have the Fiji, you'll be able to access them via Bloomberg. That's correct. So any other questions or comments that you guys might have who are on the webinar? No? Fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to then take us into a little bit on our Impact Africa Fund, which we're going to be coming out with later this month, which is an effort to raise 7 to 10 million. We have a micro lender in Africa who's going to be using our software, which is on the front end, our software to actually model the financial instrument. That right now we're the only users of our own software, but they're going to be the first third-party user, where their staff are going to be originating the loans. Again, modeling the transaction as data, not as code, catching all that information as they create loans in the urban areas of East Africa, where they are in the really poorest of the poor areas, and they are facilitating micro lending, and they're going to be creating those loans on the spot using our software, uploading this, immediately tokenizing it, and making it available to literally pay somebody via their phone. So the loan document will be on that person's phone as the borrower, as well as the funds can be sent there, or they can be paid in cash, and then they can make payments to us, and or they can make payments in cash that we will then immediately enter into their handheld, their tablet, or their laptop that syncs automatically with the accounting information. This is hugely important because one of the issues in microfinance is fraud, because it's a paper-based system, and the ability for many of what they refer to as the coaches who oversee these groups of borrowers, because these are typically women borrowers who are borrowing joint and severally as a community, that vote on who should belong to their group of loans, and they support one another in their businesses, which is a great thing, and it builds community. But what happens is some of the coaches, because it's paper-based, and then they go in after the fact, they literally can change the electronic records, which for some of the larger microfinance entities, this is a huge opportunity for fraud, because the document, the data is going to be entered in and immediately register both on the borrower's side and on the lender side, meaning the microfinance unit. Literally, the instance of fraud will take much more coordinated effort, and the borrower themselves will have to be a participant to it or a party to that. So this, we think, is going to greatly reduce that. But not only that, these microfinance loans that are going to be tokenized will allow for these loans to be socialized for impact investors in the United States to hold in an impact wallet their tokenized loans that they're funding in Africa, and they'll be able to see real time the performance of those loans and the updating of them, whether it's in East Africa, which is where we're starting with our partner, which is called Jumpstart Africa, or the other microfinance entities that we will be funding out of this. So there'll be 7 to 10 million that we're seeking to raise from accredited investors that we will then be providing our tech, training, and capital for them to grow and expand this entity. We're really excited about this. This is the first full third-party use of our software, and we're going to be doing that in Q3. So we're really excited about these, where we're literally in the business of executing and clearing deals. We're 9 deals in. Will be 14 trades executed at just under $250 million by the end of Q3, and we're going to have third-party folks using this who are very real users of the benefit of a tokenized financial instrument. And these borrowers will be using digital financial instruments as native users, where they can receive payment electronically and they can remit electronically or paper. That's some pretty fantastic stuff. We're excited to be here. We know, on the bleeding edge of this, but it's exciting because we do think that as we model these transactions as data, we are building the foundations for a global, efficient marketplace where credit can be funded at an appropriately priced manner, where the illiquidity premiums are reduced dramatically because of the utilization of the DLT, but then also where crypto can come in and fund parts of the global marketplace where the financial services markets currently don't support them. And that's when the intersection of capital markets, blockchain, and crypto will really bring about a transformation in the global financial services markets, where you have crypto providing the tier 1 capital that's going to support people becoming native users of crypto and using tokenized or digital financial instruments as a mechanism for them to perform their businesses, construct, buy, and transact. So this is what we're doing here in Inveniam. We're excited about it. We have an enormous amount of great things happening, from the WeWork building to the student housing, which we're really excited about having a municipal finance deal, where we're talking about where we have Savona Parkway executing, and then Jumpstart Africa. And we will be rolling out this first third-party user in Q3 of our software as we create the financial instruments, these data-driven instruments. And then we hope to unveil a series of partners who are going to be using our software as they tokenize existing financial instruments, and partners who will be using our software to gather the data from existing assets, specifically in the commercial real estate market. So that's a whole lot that I just shared, and I'm going to pause now. Any questions or any comments? Guys, we're super excited to be engaged with all of you. We've gotten tremendous support from the investor community, from the markets wanting to work with us. We still do need investors on a number of these deals, the WeWork deal and the equity of the WeWork deal particularly, and the Savona deal. We're raising that capital. We'll be coming to the market with documentation in the Africa deal, the Impact Africa Fund, probably in the next, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks. Our goal was 3 weeks, but we do have quite a few moving parts going. It's great to be engaged with all of you. Any last questions from anybody who's been on this call? Thank you, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to connecting with you again in the future. God bless. Bye-bye.